So yeah, hello. My name is Felix Victor Münch, as you could tell from my name or my accent. I'm from Germany, and when I came to shortly after I came to Australia, I realized I don't have any privacy here as I am used to it in Germany. It also happened that I have to say Brenda Moon is also she usually gives this talk with me together, but she doesn't feel very well. But she's there on the live stream. Hello, Brenda. But to go on, it also happened that at this time I was a first-year PhD student, so I had a lot of time. At least I thought so, that I would have a lot of time. So I thought, like, yeah, okay, I'm kind of feeling like in a surveillance state. Let's up my defenses, and I spent a lot of time on that. Brenda has also spent time on that, but she had more time to spend time on that. She's a bit older than me. So why are we here and why are we doing that? We realize that there are groups of people that don't have much time, but that still have to protect their data and their communications, and who are a little bit lost in, yeah, how can I protect my data? Because they're also not very technical. So that's what, at those people, we aim our workshop. Now I have to say I only got 20 minutes for this talk. Normally we have about 1.5 to 2 hours. And then we also do activities and explanations of fundamental concepts with padlocks, and not real padlocks, but maybe we will introduce that. And until now we only draw pictures. And we also have time for questions and discussions. If you're interested in the full talk, you can find it here. Hit me up later if you don't have the time to write it down now. As I said, I only have 20 minutes. And this whole thing is CC BY, so we are also really happy if you redistribute it and repurpose it. We usually start with worst case scenarios to make it a little bit more tangible what actually can happen if you don't take care of your data as a journalist or a researcher or citizen. The most important threat scenario is actually the weak passwords, and especially weak password reuse. So let's say you have used your standard password for Yahoo, and now it was part of a big data leak, or for Adobe or Dropbox. Everybody's was leaked at some time. It could happen that some people who are angry about your research might find out about your password, and your password is the same as your iCloud password, and until iOS 11, you didn't have two-factor authentication per default, so they could just wipe all your devices. Another one would be like if you reveal your IP address, for example, because you are while you're researching in some alt-right forums or social networks, it could happen that the administrator knows where about you live, and suddenly you have some nice guys in the neighborhood. If you, for example, would be a journalist who communicates with people in an authoritarian surveillance state, I don't want to say any state names, but there are some, and you send it, for example, via iMessage. iMessage tends to opt back to SMS messages, and hopes the government has read what you've just written to your source. The other thing, if you are traveling on airports in whatever country and out of whatever country, and you have content that some of your sources did not really want to share with anybody else than you, like on file, and for example, your unencrypted Android phone gets confiscated, then okay, this data is also in the wrong hands. And the most abstract thing, but I think it's the right audience here, that you understand that that's a problem, would be metadata retention, or just the retention of activity records. There's this nice example under this URL that they gave teams of preteens, the possibilities that a police agent might have with your metadata. The only information that they got is that at a certain time there was certain information sent to a certain journalist, and they found the leak in a mining company within 2 hours. So just with the activity records, without the content itself, you can do a lot. After those threat scenarios, I will now walk you through the solutions that we normally suggest. I will not go really deep into it. I will just mention them, but feel free to ask me later. We start with passwords because everything else what we tell people to do is almost everything is pretty useless if you don't use strong passwords. So the main risk with passwords is that we humans are not very good at making up good passwords. So a lot of people use common passwords, a lot of people use easy to guess passwords, a lot of people reuse passwords, a lot of people store their passwords in an unsafe place, and a lot of people forget their passwords, which is a problem if you don't have any reset options, which is the case with really strong cryptography. There's something that solves all those problems that a lot of people really don't want to use, and I don't know why, and it's the password manager. And we really strongly recommend for people to use it. We make two concrete recommendations. The one is an open source standard. It's KeyPass or KeyPassX for macOS. I also like KeyWeb, but it didn't have a really good security audit yet, so maybe you don't want to use it. The other solution that we recommend, because it's very convenient to use, so we think it's more likely that people use it, but we don't like the fact that it's closed source and commercial, would be 1Password. That's what we recommend. Please hit me up for other recommendations or critique. Why do I'm happy to hear that too. Solution number 2 would be two-factor authentication, which means that you use a one-time token additionally to your password. And so if your password should be cracked, somebody would still not gain access without, for example, having your phone. In this case, we recommend that people use an app for two-factor authentication and not SMS, because you remember before, SMS is not really a secure channel. We had somewhere in last year, Telstra SMS messages even got misdelivered to random people suddenly, and also if that doesn't happen, you can intercept SMS messages pretty easily if you are more techy. The next threat is, or the next topic that we discuss usually is the journalists or the researchers' privacy. The main risks, think of the racist bulletin boards that I've talked about before, and the admin who has your IP address. Your IP address is that somebody stores or gets access to your activity records. That might be the state or an institution that you work for. For example, QUT. I'm a PhD student at QUT. They actually store every single connection that you make from their network while you are working. I don't really like that. But also, you can also be surveyed by browser cookies, or also just revealing personal details to website owners, or other forms of browser fingerprinting. For example, I don't really have an idea of the audience, but there are websites who try to track you by the fonts that you have installed in your operating system, because that already gives a pretty unique fingerprint of what system you're using. Solution number 1 that helps at least against the IP address problem would be to use a wide VPN service, which is a little bit like an encrypted proxy via which you access the websites. There are a lot of services popping up there in the recent years. We recommend that you should choose one that claims not to store activity records. That is hard to verify, so reputation is key. Or maybe even if you work for an organization, maybe they have a VPN service themselves. That uses OpenVPN, which is the open source implementation, speaking of backdoors, of VPN, and that has service in safe jurisdictions, or in jurisdictions that you think are safe, for example, Germany. And yeah, we have to build, this new economy thing and everything. It's like making some advertising. And that don't insert advertising into your browsing stream, for example. Like, there are some pretty dodgy business models also out there with VPN. So if your VPN is for free, you might be paying another way. So I rather recommend the paid services. They are not that expensive. So what we have as a private sample, what we recommend usually is like NordVPN or private internet access. And What popped up recently in Switzerland is Proton VPN. They are also the guys behind Proton Mail, an encrypted webmail service. That looks also pretty good, but as a suggestion after the talk. The second solution would be using the Tor network, which is made pretty convenient with the Tor browser. But because the Tor browser is very bothersome to use, it makes the network slow, and you are, if you use it, you are very inclined to activate JavaScript, to enable cookies, to do all the unsafe stuff. If you would use it every day, don't use it every day. Really, just use it if you do something high risk. But also here, if you do something high risk, speak to another expert before you do it if you are not really tech savvy, and don't trust this talk. Yeah. Regarding data storage, there are several risks too. It's not only communication. The risks are on unauthorized access to data, for example, to your Dropbox files or whatever. Unwanted access to devices, so your phone on an airport, or your backup hard disk in your office. Data loss, which is a topic on encrypted devices. Actually, encrypted devices are easier to be corrupted just by errors. And lost access, lost passwords. For example, if you have an encrypted device, you lose the password, you lose the key, you have lost the data. The solution to that is to have 3 independent copies. Independent also means in different locations. So for me, for example, that means I have one on my laptop that I carry with me, one in the office, and one in the cloud. And encrypt everything, because you never know who gets their hands on your devices. For example, I was in Germany for a while. I came back and the hard disk in my office was just gone. I didn't know where it is, and there was a lot of research data on there. Fortunately, it was encrypted, so I was like, yeah, okay, buy a new hard disk, and I had my other backup. So, but don't forget your keys, and that loops us back to the first recommendation: use a password manager for your keys. For this, there we also recommend either to use to always just encrypt the whole device. There's no reason to leave something unencrypted if you have backups. And for files in the cloud, there's a program. I think it's mainly driven by a German, actually, Cryptomator. And Keybase also now has a Dropbox service, and they even have a chat program now. They are doing pretty amazing stuff at the moment. Lots of stuff happening there. But again, really, I cannot say that often enough. Never lose your keys. You notice it happened to me once. Yeah, to secure your communication, at this nice presentation here. And we also had the man-in-the-middle attack. So I don't have to explain that much here. Everybody can actually read every plain text that you send via the internet. Even people like here, if you are in open Wi-Fi in a coffee or something, or at an airport. So you should encrypt your communication. Here, if you have the option between this network and this network, take the upper network, for example. But the solution number 1 is actually pretty easy, and it just comes with every browser, is make sure that, if possible, to use the HTTPS version of the website. That makes sure that the communication between you and the server is encrypted. There are also plugins, like, for example, HTTPS Everywhere browser plugins that help you with that. The second solution would be PGP encryption, pretty good privacy. Sometimes people are confused because there's also GPG, which is, I think, GNU Privacy Guard, which is actually a PGP implementation, the open source PGP implementation. Just P and G, and it doesn't actually matter. Here we will recommend for using that either Keybase, which has a very intuitive way to get your PGP key, or there's, for example, for your email communication, there's GBG tools. For Windows, there's GBG for Win. For Thunderbird, there's a plugin that's called Enigmail, and there are a lot of email clients nowadays also that have GBG support. It's just pretty hard to convince other people to use it. That's actually the only problem. Solution number 3 is secure messengers. There is a lot out there on the market out there, and we've looked at a lot of messengers, and in the end we decided we can actually wholeheartedly only recommend 2 private messages. The one is Signal, and the other one is now Keybase, which is just recently launched features that make it very similar to Slack. So if you want secure team communication, have a look at that. So there was a very quick run through what we usually do in 2 hours. And but of course it doesn't cover everything, and it also won't cover the future. So how to choose a tool if you need something else. We came up with 4 things to consider. First is it open source? Open source makes sure that there are no backdoors. So open source is, I would always try to use open source. The second thing is, does it have a good reputation? Because even if it is open source, you cannot understand what it is doing. So you rely on other people who know what it is doing, who can actually look at it. And if it is not open source, reputation is even more important. Also, if it is not open source, but also if it's open source, it's also always a good sign if it had an independent security audit. That means like other people that are not connected to the company or the entity that produced that product have actually looked at it and said, like, yes, it's safe. And the fourth and often overlooked thing is, will you actually use it? That's why, for example, we included the not open source tool 1Password, because we suggested people use it. Well, once they've installed it, they use it. They really made the user experience so good that people actually then ask themselves, why haven't they used that before already all the time? Because it's better than having passwords. Yeah, where to from here? There are a lot of, we have all the sources at the end of the presentation, so you can also look that up on the website that I've showed before. And yeah, I would say, like, start using some of these tools, get better informed, and everything that we've told, everything that we also always say that it's, if your endpoint device is not secure, then all that what you do is just in vain. So keep your devices up to date. Yeah. Thanks. And again, get expert advice before you do anything that might be really high risk, because just even a 2-hour talk cannot be enough. Questions? I think no. Here are a lot of resources, and here you can follow us on Twitter.